November meeting of the Police Advisory Board of Sherwood to order. And Angie, if you would do the roll call, please.
I will. Good evening, everybody. Chair Lohman.
Here.
Vice Chair Foster.
Here.
Brian Dorsey is absent this evening. And Rich Miller.
Here.
Bob Silverforb.
Here.
Mike Smith.
Here.
Megan Thornton.
Here.
Chris West.
Present.
And Lori Zwingli.
Here.
All right, great. Thank you.
We have Counselor Young as well as Chief Jeff. Okay, approval of the minutes. I read through them. Did anybody else read through them?
Yeah, I slogged through them, and they look pretty good. I don't have any corrections, but I've been wrong before. So given that, I move that they be accepted as submitted, be approved.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the minutes, and looks like Laurie has seconded that. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you very much, Angie. And if you'll post them and let me know, I'll come over and put my John Henry on it.
All right, sounds good. I will definitely do that.
Okay. Board member announcements. Diane, how about you? Let's start with you. Anything for us?
Nothing from me tonight.
Okay. Nothing from Brian. Rich, what you got?
Nothing.
Okay. Bob?
Well, there's always one that has to break the cycle, right? I have two short things. I'm proud to announce that the traffic sign at the corner of Whitney and Dunholly is up and healthy. It is still standing. I go up there that way just about every day, and it's good to have it there. So nice going, you guys, with the Traffic Safety Committee. Also, a number of months back, somebody sent a message, and my wife is confident it came from the chief, perhaps, that we ought to take a look at a program that's put on by Emmanuel Ocho, titled Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. It is a terrific program. He has a new person that he interviews about every other week. They range all the way from Matthew McConaughey, that was the first one. Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, was on there several times. But the reason I'm bringing this up is that the most recent one was held in Petaluma, California, with their police department. And he interviewed 4 members of the Petaluma department. It was terrific. And all the other members of the police force were in attendance. And I'd highly recommend that you take a look at it. It's well worth your time. It takes about 20 minutes, so it's not real lengthy. And this guy, Emmanuel Ocho, who just happens to be a ESPN announcer and also a former NFL football player, does a terrific job. And he's just come out with a best-selling book titled Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. A number of great questions, a lot of good discussions. So, Ralph, thanks for the opportunity to say that, and I'm done.
Well, Bob, why don't you shoot us that information, how we connect with that, and shoot it to all of us so we can have it at our fingertips.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay.
Bob, would you just forward that to us and we'll forward it to the rest of the board?
Fine, I'll be happy to do that, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike, you're up.
Let me unmute here. Well, just based on previous conversations regarding drinking during this meeting, please let the record show that this is tea. Okay. Other than that, I'm very boring. I have nothing.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Megan, do you have anything for us tonight?
I've got nothing.
Wow, we're a really quiet bunch tonight. Chris.
Well, I'm going to follow Bob's lead. I've got to come clean. I have been cheating on my hometown of Sherwood. Been doing some consulting work for the city of Tigard. And that, Chief, is why I've been doing lots of team meetings because I use Teams too. But the work I'm doing is dealing with some plans of maybe building some new administrative facilities. But in preparing for the work that I've been doing, I came across that they have established, and just last week they actually placed the citizens on what's called their Public Safety Advisory Board. And it came out of the discussions that the city council and the citizens had after the George Floyd incident. And they have created a Public Safety Advisory Board that will begin reviewing public safety practices. So in part, it's going to be doing the same sort of things that we're doing with the chief in terms of reviewing police procedures, but there will also be other departments and stuff that they will be dealing with, and it's all linked to the city's anti-racism action plan. So they didn't have a police advisory board. They don't have a police advisory board. This is sort of one, but it has a very different charter as it was created. But I thought that was something to interest to us because we're dealing with some of the issues that they're going to be dealing with under the same reasons. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was Tina and I were coming back home from the new C's Candy Store. Just saying that's a great place. Everybody's got to go shop there. And we were coming down Sherwood Boulevard and right by the new middle school when two of Sherwood's finest were tracking together, and they went through downtown, Old Town, on separate tracks, but they came out the other side, both getting on Main as we were following one of them in Maine. Clackamas County Sheriff was coming with sirens blazing, and somebody was rip-roaring ahead of them coming into Old Town, and Sherwood's finest whipped U-turns, and we climbed up on the edge of the curb so that everybody could go by. But later in the day, I was heading over to Sentinel Storage to check on my trailer, and Chief, I saw a couple flatbed tow trucks hauling away some cars. Was there some accidents caused by that guy speeding through Old Town? Do you know?
Yes, there was. So earlier that morning, the car was stolen in Happy Valley, and a report was taken by Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. And just a little bit less than an hour later, the car was a Clackamas County deputy found the car, or came across the car up on Lad Hill Road, south of town, and a pursuit ensued. And unfortunately, they pursued the suspect right into Old Town at about 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and which is what you saw. We had two officers on that learned of the pursuit, and they informed dispatch that we would not be engaging. They were having trouble switching back and forth on the radio. They were trying to get word that they to make a request that the pursuit be terminated. I don't know that they ever got that out, but anyway, So the car sped down Main Street and turned right onto First Avenue. And when it did, it collided into another vehicle that was at the stop sign there waiting to proceed through the intersection. So a crash occurred there. The suspect took off from that crash, of course, and the deputy continued to pursue. And so then when our officers came upon that crash, they stopped then, and they were not in the pursuit. They just turned around and followed behind. So they stopped at the crash. The suspect then crashed again at the roundabout at First and Ash, took out a stop sign, knocked the stolen car out of commission, and was eventually taken into custody. So it was quite a little shindig, unfortunately. Very glad nobody got hurt.
That makes sense, where I ran into the two flatbeds, and from what I remember to the car that passed us at a high rate of speed right near the charter school, I didn't see that one getting hauled away, but I saw two other nice cars getting hauled away on my way over to the storage center. So thanks, Chief.
As far as I know, there were only two cars that were damaged: the stolen car and the car that they crashed into at First and Main. So
so probably the second one I saw just real close to City Hall was where I passed it. That must have been the stolen vehicle that they were hauling away from that roundabout.
Could be. Or I mean, I'm assuming that was one of them. Yeah.
Well, that's all I had, Ralph.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Laurie?
Sorry, I had to unmute. So we just had our Sherwood Police Foundation meeting, and I just wanted to let everyone know that we are looking at alternate ways of putting on our gala this year so that we can continue to support the police department. Nothing is completely set yet, but do keep an eye out, because we are going to try to find a way to continue to raise funds for our PD.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. The only thing I have tonight is a question. Laurie and I were together with Diane, one day last week, and Laurie asked the question, said, are we going to have a board meeting in December? And I think our tradition has been to not have a December meeting. And so I just want to ask the chief, what's been our practice?
You're on mute, Chief.
Muted,
Yep.
Chief.
The third week in December, is that the 24th?
The 17th.
That's the 17th.
Okay, so oftentimes there's going to be, obviously, the Christmas holiday would be one reason, and then the other reason most recently, I think, is because of the annual boards and commissions dinner, which is not going to take place this year for obvious reasons. They will have a meeting, and I apologize, I don't have the information in front of me, but it'll happen virtually this year, and I just don't remember what the date of that is. So let me see if I can check, see if it's on the website really quick. But certainly it's your decision whether or not you wanted to have a meeting anyway, right? I mean, so you're not going to be required to attend a boards and commission dinner. You will need to do a report. But I think it seems like they're going to have it in January, but I want to see if I can get this figured out for sure.
So wouldn't we have to be using or spending this evening deciding what the bullet points are for the board and commission dinner? I mean, isn't that what we did last year?
I'm sorry, Megan, I can't. Your volume is really low. I didn't hear what you said.
Trying to find creative ways to fund this project. The best solution.
What I was saying is, if we were going to be doing a dinner, we'd be spending this evening figuring out the talking points. So, are they doing Zoom gala in December?
Are they doing? I apologize. Did anybody else? Is anybody hearing that any better than I was?
I think, is she asking? I didn't hear it all, but I think, Megan, are you asking if the boards and commissions, in lieu of a dinner, are they doing a Zoom meeting in December instead?
That's a good question.
Well, as I recall, traditionally, all the years that I've been on this board, the December meeting was the board and commission meeting. We did not have a separate PAB meeting. So if they're not going to have the board and commission meeting this year, their dinner, then maybe we want to go ahead and have our meeting. If they're going to have a board and commission meeting in January, that could be our January meeting.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I was able to find it, and the date has not been set yet, but Sylvia said that maybe January. There, as I said, there won't be an annual dinner, so there won't be a meeting that you have to attend as a board. I would anticipate that if they have a meeting where the reports are presented, you might be able to just get away with the chair or some other designated person, there to present the report. Because that's normally what they do at the dinner. Somebody stands up and gives the report. So I would assume that that's probably what they would do via Teams, as Megan was asking. So it won't require attendance of the full board this year. So, and I would not anticipate that anything would happen in December. I anticipate this would probably take place the meeting would take place in January. So whether or not you choose to meet in December is purely up to you and the holiday schedule. The regular date is on the 17th.
I thought that we don't meet on the 17th, that we just see each other in 2021.
So then I suppose Megan does bring up a good point in chat, just that we probably then, if we aren't going to do December or whatever we decide, we do need to probably coordinate what we're going to put in the response for the report that needs to be submitted to the overall council or the annual review. We do need to have a time to do that.
Yes, that's correct. You will need to prepare the report.
Can I ask a question about the chat feature? Do we capture that in our public meeting documents? Because I'm worried that the public can't see that.
Yeah, no, we don't utilize the chat. So I apologize. I don't think we've mentioned that before, but we need to keep everything audible for those that are watching.
Yeah.
And those that might watch later. Thank you for the reminder.
Sorry, I just used chat since my volume doesn't seem to be working. But for the record, my question was on chat about, if we generally prepare the board and commission annual dinner talking points the month before. So I was just saying, well, we need to either do that tonight or, somehow in January before the board and commission meeting happens.
We can hear you much better now that you moved rooms. You're much better.
Oh, well, maybe it's the Seahawks. And the volume of the TV.
So I'm going to suggest that since we do have a report that we need to create, that we go ahead and meet in December. If your personal obligations, take you elsewhere, that's fine. But we do need to have this report created, and then we will not meet potentially in January when we come together with all the commissions. That's my recommendation. Does anybody want to weigh in?
I think that's fine. Can we get a copy of last year's talking points sent out to us as a refresher?
Yes, we will email last year's report.
And or Chief, do we know if the format is going to be the same? Because I believe that last year it was different than the prior years.
Right now.
It's going to be the same this year.
Okay.
And we really shortened our report up. We made it very succinct.
30.
I love bullet points.
Yep.
I like Ralph's suggestion, and I'd formally move that for consideration.
Okay, we have a formal movement here by Chris. Is there a second?
I'll
I second.
Okay. Now, any discussion?
In this area, there's
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of meeting in December at our normal time signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
50.
Okay, so moved. And that ends our member announcements. So,
50,
December 17th, you said, Jeff? Okay.
We could likely.
Wrap up 2020.
We could likely.
Okay. We're down to business, and I'm going to turn it over to the chief. We have a police policy review and review latest updates on a number of numbers there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we do. So, as you recall, last month I went through how the policy update process works. And so there were several updates then that came out either prior to or kind of the same time or since. And so we've completed this most recent update process. I can tell you that it was probably about, I'm sorry. Oh, I can tell you that it was probably about 5 hours or so. So there was quite a bit of time going through, as I showed you, and looking at the various sections and updates and getting that done. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, and we sent those policies out, so hopefully the ones that have been updated, so consider them draft. They have not been released yet. They need to get approved by you and City Council. And just as a reminder for the process, if you approve the policies tonight, which I am recommending and requesting, then I will take them to City Council with your recommendation for approval to get council's approval, and then we will release them, formalize them in our system. So with that.
So Chief, can I ask, is this the result of the last legislative session that, I know that's what we discussed last month, that you were going to have a bunch of changes. Is that what most of these are from?
Yes, and I'll cover that as I go through these. Okay, for some reason, I'm clicking and it's not letting me. So let's try this again. Are you guys able to see my screen yet? Okay. Brad, if you're listening, I'm having technical difficulties now.
So you usually get an option to kind of share a window or share an application. Just pick the one that says window.
Well, I'm clicking on what I have on my desktop and it's not coming up.
What would we do without Brad?
Hesitant to do anything on my end because that's going to affect the stream. So when you when you hit the little square box with the little up arrow in it, you'll get another window that pops up, and I think one says desktop, and then one will kind of show anything that you have open in the background.
Yeah, I have screen number 1. I have. It says desktop and a window, and there's.
Do you have 2 screens or 1 screen?
Under what?
Just physically, do you have 1 computer screen or 2 computer screens?
In front of me?
Right. Are you on your laptop or a desktop PC?
I'm on my laptop.
Okay. So what happens if you click that screen 1? There.
Make it mute.
Okay. So now open whatever you're trying to open. There you go.
Can everybody see this now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you should have, thank you, Brad, you should have in front of you Policy 107, Chief Executive Officer. And just in the interest of everybody talking, Ralph, if you can just confirm that that's what everybody sees on my screen.
Confirmed.
Okay. So this actually was updated, a very small update as a result of changes we made to the municipal code. So this was not generated by a Lexible update. And so on 107.3, this is the only change. The police chief of this department as a condition of employment should have within 12 months of appointment successfully obtained executive certification through Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, DPSST. So that used to say 24 months, which frankly I thought was too long, so we changed that to 12 months. So that's the first one, very simple. Any questions about that? So the executive certification is the highest level of certification that you can get. And in order to get that certification, you have to be in an executive level position, either a police chief or a second in command, where you serve as the police chief in the chief's absence. So that's what that's about. So that's the first one. And so now, Mr. Chair, you should see policy 300 in front of you.
Confirmed.
Okay, very good. This is the biggest one. So this is a result of the statutory changes predominantly. I'll cover each chapter as we go through, but just know that in most every chapter that we go through, there was also a lot of grammatical corrections made and some formatting things, and I'm obviously not going to capture all those, but those are contained in the updates as well. Every time they do updates, they take the opportunity to fix the occasional misspelled word or things like that we've talked about. So this is use of force. This underwent significant updates as the result of the changes of statute. A large portion of the update included language for the carotid control hold, or what is often referred to as a chokehold. So that was made up the bulk of this update. And so what I will do, before I get there, some other changes are some of the definitions. They added some definitions. For example, they added the definition of imminent, totality of circumstances. Those are very important terms. And then, so let's get down to the kind of the bulk of where they had made updates. And again, you have these in front of you, so you can refer to your own copies. 300.3.5, this section does not reflect the language that was recommended or suggested by Lexipol. And the reason is Lexipol, in their update, put language in there explaining what the carotid hold was, when it could be used, the training required, and so on and so forth. I have the ability to accept or reject very specific pieces of this. I chose to reject that language because this is where we want to stay. The language we have right here with 300.3.5 is where this department, and I believe the community and the city, based on conversations we've had, wants us to be. We're not going to train on the carotid hold or any type of chokehold. And so we're not going to authorize anything like that unless the officer finds themselves in a situation where deadly force is justified. And if that's the case, then we're not going to dictate what they can do while they're fighting for their lives. And so in that situation, as is explained in other areas of this policy, any number of things can happen when somebody's fighting for their lives. So if deadly force is justified, that changes things, but otherwise we're going to stick with this language. So any questions about that? That's really probably the most significant talking point that we're going to cover tonight, because the way Lexipol designed this update is they designed it so agencies have this choice, because there's no two agencies alike on this topic. So as I said, this is where we want to be, and so we're sticking with that language, which also, by the way, it mirrors state statute. I just don't have all the other explanatory stuff in there. Any questions about that?
Clarification. Isn't this section the one we did first, where we red marked most of the issues, or am I losing my mind?
No, you're correct. That's very good memory. So we updated, and I say we as an agency updated this section of our policy very quickly after the George Floyd incident. We had, even in the conversations we had with City Council and others, this had already been updated. And then the statute was changed and kind of caught up. Lexipol now has caught up. And as I said, this is where we want to stay. So this is not new. That's a good point, Megan, that you're making. This is not new, but it's important that I let you know that Lexipol was offering differing language, and I'm recommending we stay right here.
Yeah, well, if you
Any other questions? Okay, the other piece that I want to point out.
You would support a project if you would.
I may have gone by it already. Let me make sure here. Yeah, I have. Excuse me. Let me skip back up.
So I know there's a lot of information, but what would be helpful is knowing if you would.
So they added the language for duty to intercede and report, which we had tried to cover initially as well. And here you go. It's right here. So. So just so everybody knows, we're on what I think is page.
If you would, so that's a lot of information. Will be helpful.
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. Page 2 on the bottom of the actual policy. So they added Lexipol recommended, and whenever possible, which is about 95% of the time, Lexipol comes up with very good language from a grammatical formatted perspective. And so even if I have the same kinds of things in here already, I'm going to go with their language just because it's going to read better. They do this way more, write policy way more often than I do. So duty to intercede and report. So this basically covers that piece. Again, we had that in here, but now they've updated their policy, so we'll take their language on this. And then state reporting requirements, which is, again, these are part of the new statutory requirements that you have there. Basically says if you see somebody that's using force that's clearly beyond what is reasonable, then you need to intervene. And if you see somebody doing something that is potentially not okay, that's what this paragraph says, then you need to report that to a supervisor. And then you have 72 hours to make that report. And then they added some language on perspective. Any questions on that?
Chief, why is it 72 hours in section 302.2?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what the legislature came up with. That's just what the legislature came up with.
Can we shorten it in Sherwood?
We certainly could, but 72 hours is only 3 days.
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding then, because it seems to me that if an incident has occurred...
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe it's our Wi-Fi tonight. I'm sorry.
No, you're all right. Now it's good.
Okay. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it seems to me that if a police officer has used excessive force, like, it should be reported sooner than 72 hours. Am I misunderstanding what this means? I mean, it says be made to a supervisor. I mean, I would think, you know, a supervisor would know in minutes.
It probably depends
not
on...
necessarily. There may not be a supervisor on.
Yes.
The officer may be in the call for another hour or two. I mean, it's just, there's just too many factors, too many variables involved there. And so that's not, again, that's not the time frame that I came up with. That's the time frame that the state legislature came up with.
That's what I was wondering. Does it ever come where schedules of different officers and supervisors, really this allows a little bit of time for supervisors to be back on duty when maybe a report needs to come in?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. You also need to understand that this is, the legislature is passing requirements and putting these parameters in place for the entire state. Now in Sherwood, it's going to be fairly easy to get a hold of a supervisor less than 72 hours. But in a lot of agencies, there may not be a supervisor available for 72 hours. There may only be one supervisor that the person can speak with. So, again, there's just a lot of variables that they looked at. And so this is just going with state statute, which is always the best practice.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on this? So outside of that, the majority of this policy did not change. So those are the sections that have been updated.
So I know there's a lot of information. I'm sure you'll have questions, but we'll be helpful another time you folks.
All right, then I will move on to the next one.
I know there's a lot. I'm not looking for biting, but just a poll.
So Mr. Sherry should have in front of you policy 308 on the screen.
Confirmed.
Okay. This policy was updated to now include statutory changes regarding the use of tear gas for crowd control, as well as grammatical and formatting updates. So the main, really the bulk of the updates on this had to do with new state statute regarding tear gas for crowd control. And that is contained right here. And again, this is statutory language. Talks about when it can be used, that there has to be a right. So it talks about, begins with tear gas guidelines in 308.6, and then 308.7, it gets into specific crowd control guidelines where the statutory language is actually cited. Has to be a right declared. Has to have an announcement, sufficient times for individuals to evacuate the area, second announcement. So that's the bulk of that's the update right there in this chapter.
You'll have a lot of questions, but
so Chief, if I remember right from our earlier discussion, you guys don't possess any tear gas, correct?
That is correct. In fact, we don't carry or use a lot of the control device measures that are listed in this policy. However, we may at some point, and I think it's good practice to have the policy in place, and so that if a decision is made down the road to start carrying batons, then we already have the language, the best practice language in place. Specific to tear gas, we don't carry it, but there's a potential that an incident would take place when we would need mutual aid and somebody could show up with it. So it's important that we have this policy language in there.
So that's what I remembered. And so my question that I needed clarification was, so let's say Washington County Sheriff brings in their specialized riot, whatever it's called, team to assist with something going on within the city of Sherwood. Are they beholding to your policies or their policies? How does that work?
So there's a couple answers to that. Specific to this, it's all going to be the same, right? Because it's state law.
Right.
If it isn't a matter of state law, they will, as much as possible, defer to the policy of the agency and jurisdiction. So if I call in the mobile field force, which is what you're referring to, or if I call in the tactical team, we're going to set up what's called a joint command, and they are going to kind of run the operation, but the incident commander for Sherwood, whether it's me or one of the captains, is going to, for lack of a better term, look out for the interest of Sherwood and make sure that things are taking place in accordance with what we want in our community. So there's going to be coordination with that. And if we ever get to, some operational decision that where there's a difference, there's going to be several things that are considered. One is going to be the policy. Certainly before all that is going to be safety of officers, safety of citizens, and those kinds of things. But then we'll also say, hey, look, we don't, that's against our policy. Let's find another option. So there could be instances where they show up in some jurisdiction and the policy of the jurisdiction doesn't work, right? I mean, that's entirely possible, but I would not expect that to be the case here, or frankly anywhere in Washington County, just because of the quality of policing and the quality of the policies that we have. Many agencies in Washington County utilize Lexipol, so language is going to be very similar. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, they're going to work with us so that we can police in a manner that's consistent with our policy.
Just shoot me an email.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, you're interested.
Any other questions on 308? Okay, very good. We'll go to 340. Mr. Chair, you should see policy 340 on the screen.
Confirmed.
This was a smaller update again, but very important. This chapter was updated along with the general grammar and formatting. And they added the same language in this. So this chapter deals with how we expect our members to behave and conduct themselves. So we added the 340 under 340.4.1. The duty to intervene and report misconduct was added again, as you saw it in the use of force policy. And in this section, because we're talking in this policy specifically about appropriate conduct and misconduct, they actually added some language that's germane to this chapter that wasn't germane to the use of force chapter. laying out what misconduct means, and so then you can see the various examples of that. So that's the update for 340. Any questions about that?
Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening.
Then we will move on to 612.
Of the Sherwood broadband.
So, Mr. Chair, you should see policy 612 on the screen.
Confirmed.
So this is a newer policy. I can't remember when this chapter was added. I think it was a couple updates before. But they just updated it to provide some language cleanups regarding the release and control of Brady material. And they added some language at the bottom of the chapter that establishes a Brady coordinator. And so for those that don't know, Brady material is any material that is termed exculpatory or potentially exculpatory, and what for the prosecution. And so what that means is that it may shed a negative light on a prosecution witness or on potentially on their credibility. So it's named after the Brady court decision some years ago, and basically in layman's terms, if the prosecution has any Brady material or any information about the officer that's going to testify on the case, they are required to produce that material, disclose that material to the defense. So that's what Brady is all about. That's what Brady material is all about. And if you want a better explanation of that, I may ask Lori Zwingli to help me, but I think that kind of gets the point across. And so that's what this chapter talks about. So again, they cleaned up the language, and let's see, where does it talk about Brady coordinator? I must have gone by it. Oh, there it is. Brady process 612.3. The police chief shall select a member of the agency to coordinate requests for Brady information. So that's the biggest change in this. And at this point, that responsibility falls on me. So just like in any organization, any authority or responsibility that isn't delegated falls on the head of the organization. And so at this point, that's how we've been operating. That's been my responsibility. So we'll continue to do that. But any questions about this chapter? Okay, hearing none.
Just estimates at this point. The engineering firm will tell us a lot
more. We will move on to chapter 1000. So, Mr. Chair, you should have policy 1000 on screen.
Confirmed.
So I know this is a lot of information, and I'm sure you all
okay, this is one of two chapters that were updated automatically. And if you remember, last month I explained to you one of the ways the update process takes place is if there is a chapter that does not have any agency-specific language. In other words, we've never changed a thing in it. Then we have the option of updating them automatically. So this is one of those chapters. This was not a chapter that we needed to change. We were comfortable with Lexipol's language. So they had some cleanups and some various things that they did to this grammar. There was nothing that was substantial or critical, so the policy was updated automatically. So I wanted to make sure you had it before you so that you could have the ability to go through it. So if there's any questions about anything in this policy, I'm happy to answer them for you, but it basically lays out the process that we use to recruit and hire folks for open positions. This section here, you'll see, kind of lays out the process that we use to hire police officers. In case anybody's wondering what all it involves, that lays it out for you. Any questions? Okay. So actually, before I get out of this, this is an interesting section, 1000.6 Disqualification Guidelines. I'm point of interest. We're often asked or about the myth or misconception that you can't have ever made a mistake in your life if you want to be a police officer, which I can personally attest to is not the case. And so here's kind of the disqualification guidelines, right? So everybody makes mistakes. When we go through the background investigation, this is what we're looking at, and this is what we're considering. How old were you when the mistake was made? How much time has it been? Were there any patterns of past behavior? In other words, was there a series of mistakes that seemed to happen all the time? Or was it just, the immaturity of youth and so on? Severity of the behavior. Did you, did you try marijuana once at a party, or did you deal marijuana for a period of 3 years, right? That would be the difference. What would happen if you repeated the mistake today? What would be the consequences? Is it something that would land us on the front page of the paper? Likelihood of reoccurrence, relevance to public safety employment, so on and so forth. So just thought I'd point that out in case anybody asks you. Okay. Okay, Mr. Chair, you should have policy 1016 on the screen.
It's confirmed.
Okay, this chapter was not included in the Lexipol update. However, we identified some corrections that needed to be made. And very simply, the language before identified that officers needed to carry CPR masks or little barrier masks. Well, we do not do breathing anymore. What's being taught now is called hands-only CPR, and it consists only of compressions. Once the medics get there with advanced life support, that they will take over the breathing part. So we had policy that said you had to have a mask, even though we're not ever going to really use the masks. So we just went in there and changed the language from saying masks to appropriate PPE. And where does it say down here? There we go. Here's where it was at. Appropriate PPE, including gloves, hand cleanser, or other specialized equipment. And then on E, it said using appropriate face masks, we changed it to appropriate PPE. So a couple of really simple changes, but those were driven by the agency.
Chief?
Yes.
Is that how CPR is being taught in general, or is that a response to COVID for the department?
In general. Okay. Yeah, CPR is now being taught. What the research showed is that the most critical function for life-saving efforts is to keep the blood flowing. If we can get keep the blood flowing to the brain, number one, and the other parts of the bodies, that was the most important component. And breathing was haphazard at best. And they found in the research that you really didn't get that much oxygen inside of patients anyway. And it was far more important to get the oxygenated blood from the heart and the lungs up into the brain. So hands-only CPR was being taught before COVID. Certainly COVID doesn't change anything, right? I mean, makes it more important, but.
Okay, I have a COVID question, Chief.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, are police officers required to wear masks?
Yes.
Is there any recourse if they don't?
Yeah, they can get in trouble.
I think you should start telling them to be consistent in wearing them in public.
Okay. Do you have anything more specific?
I've just heard people comment, like my husband walked into, thank you. He was gassing up the car and walked in to fill up the propane tank for the barbecue. And, a police officer was in there with his no mask buying chips and candy type things, convenience store food. And it was over the summer. I have no idea who. But I just thought, geez, it seems to me that if you're going to be a representative of the public and a public employee, you should be doing what we're supposed to be doing. So I just didn't know if there was kind of a higher standard that they're being held to or not.
No, they're being held to the same standard as everybody else, and we've made that very clear. So I will send out another reminder.
Thanks.
No camera.
Okay, any questions?
No microphone.
I had a question.
You can't.
Yes.
Counselor Young here. Is it typical? Oh,
thank you.
Never mind. I just saw where you spelled out the acronym right there, personal protective equipment, and then later on kept using PPE. So I was wondering if it's typical we use PPE or use the acronym, but I see where it's spelled out previously. So that was my question, but you answered it as you were scrolling up.
Good. All right. Last chapter. Mr. Chair, you should see policy 1026 on your screen.
Confirmed.
Okay, and this is the second chapter that I talked about that had the automatic update. Personnel records is not something that we're going to tweak language on. We're going to use Lexipol's language. And so that's what we've done. And so they had, again, general cleanup and grammatical types of things on there. So wanted you to have this in front of you in case you had any questions. Any questions about this?
None.
Okay. Then we should be back to normal. And just that's the last, as I said, last chapter. And are any questions generally about the updates or anything else on that?
So, Chief, this is the first time that I recall that we're being asked to recommend changes to council. Is that correct?
Well, under the new formal process, yes, but I have brought policies to you. There was a series of policy updates that I brought to you a few months ago, and then I also brought in the council, but there was not the formal process where you approve them and recommend that council approve them.
Okay. I was trying to remember, and I was struggling. I remember the last couple months going through stuff, but I would like to say that I appreciate the opportunity to go through it tonight, and I would move, if there's no discussion, I would move that we recommend that the council approve these changes.
If I may just interrupt for a second, if you could tweak your motion to say that you move that you approve the policy updates and recommend city council do likewise.
All right. I move that the Police Advisory Board approve these policy updates as presented and recommend that the city council approves them too.
Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Megan. Is there any further discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. So moved. There you go, Chief.
Thank you, board.
We are now down to item 6, which is traffic safety update. And there is information within it towards the lower end of our agenda, big lengthy form. Am I correct, Chief, that it's Resolution 2020-XXX, establishing acceptable traffic calming measures?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So our liaisons, I'm going to call on you folks.
I think that this is Mike. I think that would be me. We met on October 22nd. Everybody was there except Mr. West, who I think was probably playing with Tigert at that point. So missed you, buddy. Had a great meeting though. One of the interesting things, Julia and Chief, help me with the pronunciation here. Hadjic?
Hajduk.
Hajduk, okay. When your last name is Smith, everything else is very difficult. So. But Julia gave us an update on the roundabout at Langer Farms, Century, the 2-lane roundabout there by Walmart, which has everybody in a tizzy. And just so everybody is aware, that is going to be restriped into a single lane roundabout rather than the 2-lane roundabout that it currently is. The 2-lane just seems to be confusing everybody. It may go back to a 2-lane sometime in the future, but in the meantime, it's going to go to a 1-lane. That's going to cost about approximately $70,000 to do that, which sounds like a lot for restriping, but that includes engineering, lighting, design, bid costs, all that kind of good stuff that goes into that. That will be happening probably in January to March timeframe. So you'll see some changes there.
Seriously, there's nothing cheaper. I mean, education. We're crying out loud. If you can drive, you should be able to figure that one out.
Well, you know, well,
I mean, personal opinion here, but we're crying out loud.
Actually, the question of the cost of that was raised, and Bob gave a really great explanation in terms of everything that goes into making those changes. And it's not just repainting stripes, it's some landscaping and lighting and all that kind of good stuff. And I understand education, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just saying, instead of doing that period, can't we just educate on how to drive in a roundabout?
I think that we failed spectacularly in that respect in every roundabout that we've got here in Sherwood. So the fact that this is a 2-lane one is even more exasperating. So
I think it came down to a safety issue, is we're trying to correct the safety issues that roundabout has had.
So how did we end up with the design that we have currently to begin with? If we're saying it's a safety issue, why did we go in that direction to begin with?
According to Mr. Galati, there were a number of, well, not a number, but quite a bit of a study that was conducted. And that roundabout, for the amount of traffic that is going through that area, is actually well designed for the traffic that they anticipated. That amount of traffic is not there right now, because of COVID and whatever other issues. So the fact that the roundabout is actually well designed for what they thought would be there, but it's confusing people because it's just not correct for the amount of people going through there.
So then does that mean once COVID is over and the expected amount of traffic shows up that we have to change it back?
Well, possibly down the road, but not, this is not going to happen overnight. Commissioner Young?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in because the decision to turn this into a one lane, I believe, and I can't remember when our work session was, but I believe it was before COVID even happened, where we were presented the information that originally when this roundabout was created, the traffic study estimated way more traffic than it's getting, regardless of COVID. So they did another traffic study. I don't know if they did a full traffic study. They did another study of some sort after those 3 kids had gotten hit. They went out and re-looked at what traffic is actually going through there. And I'm going off top of my mind from like 10 months ago. So it just didn't have the traffic that they had anticipated. So the one lane will be sufficient for the traffic that actually flows through that area.
But I'm just looking at costing the city $70,000 versus we have a functioning roundabout. If there are less than anticipated cars in it, shouldn't it be safer inherently?
No, let me, if I may, jump in.
I know I can't change anything now, but it just seems ridiculously stupid amount of money to spend on something like that.
So, as has been very well pointed out, the roundabout was overbuilt based on estimations at the time because of a fair amount of negative feedback from drivers in that particular roundabout, as well as the accident that we had. The city determined to have a consultant come in and take a look at it, and the consultant decided, as Councilor Young said, that the roundabout has not met the level of traffic that was anticipated, and so it's overbuilt. And so then what happens is that as a result of that, it's creating driver confusion. And they actually stood out there and monitored traffic, and were able to document cars that were appeared to be confused and appeared because of the multiple lanes. So their recommendation was there was a series of changes that could be made, far more expensive than what we're looking at now. And so the decision was made to reduce it to a one-lane roundabout, which would minimize, probably not eliminate, driver confusion, because there's some percentage of drivers that just drive confused all the time. But it would certainly minimize driver confusion and in turn make the roundabout safer. So that's the conclusion that was made. So that was the decision that was made. So you have to remember that you have to play the middle road, right? There's always going to be drivers out there that, as Megan has indicated, that don't get confused about that roundabout at all. And there's drivers that are on the other end of the spectrum and will just be nice at that way. So you have to plan and engineer for the middle of the road. You can't plan and engineer for the greatest drivers any more than you can for the worst drivers. So that's really everything that goes into that. The determination is made that roundabout needs to be scaled down to make it a little bit simpler for drivers to navigate. And it doesn't need to have multiple lanes right now. Simple fact of the matter, pre-COVID, it did not need to have multiple lanes. At some point down the road, if the traffic volume increases, all we have to do is take the paint off the road and make it back into a 2-lane roundabout. Other physical changes that are much more expensive would then again be much more expensive to undo to make it larger. So that's a little bit more to add.
I'll tell you quickly as a comment, as a parent who's teaching a teen driver to drive right now, what seemed very simple to me was very confusing to him when we went around that 2-lane roundabout when he was in the car driving home from Walmart, that I grabbed the steering wheel a little bit to sway him back into the right lane. It is very confusing to, a new, less experienced driver. And hopefully that's not the norm, but I'll tell you, sitting as the parent with a teen driver, it was interesting to see it through his eyes.
Or my mother who went, oh shit, and literally just stopped in the middle of it. And I was like, Mom, you can't stop in a roundabout. You just can't. This was a few years ago. We just had a baby. She was a little tired, but still, she stopped in the middle. So, yeah.
I gotta say, I'm a little frustrated by how this has panned out. I mean, if we had some sort of a study done and the study recommended 2 lanes, and that, how long has that thing been in there? It hasn't been that long. And now we're having to redo it based on another study. How much money has gone into this?
I can't answer that. I can't answer that question, but what I would respectfully do is remind everybody that this is not a decision point for this board. Mike is simply given an update about what the Traffic Safety Committee had in their last meeting. And in fact, it was not a decision point for them either, because this problem and issue started before the Traffic Safety Committee was up and running. But the city did want the Traffic Safety Committee to be aware of the process and the work that had gone into it. So I'll just offer that tidbit.
And I'm kind of giggling just a little bit here too, because truthfully, of all the things that were on the agenda on the 22nd, we had these same types of conversations about this same issue with the committee. We're just going, what? $70,000? You got to be kidding me! Oh my God! Type stuff. So, but as the chief says, this didn't come from the committee. This was just a point of information. So.
And I don't think anybody anticipated doing another study shortly after that round. What's been there, 5 years maybe? I can't remember. Walmart was 2014 or something. 5 or 6 years. I don't think anybody anticipated doing another study until we had so many complaints, and then the 3 kids that got hit, and the view through the roundabout is difficult to see from one side to the next, and so sometimes you have to relook at what was done.
So in other news of the committee, we have 4 issues that are pending and getting additional data collected on each of these. A flashing crosswalk sign at Sunset and Timbrel, request for 2 additional stop signs at Villa, Wildlife Haven, and Railroad Streets. The next one got quite a bit of discussion. And does anybody here live on Lavender Place? It seems to be an area where neighbors are somewhat tense with each other regarding parking. So there's quite a bit of issues regarding parking, no parking zones, et cetera, that we're getting some additional research from Mr. Galati on that.
Is that like north of Safeway area? Is that where that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last is a request for a blinking yellow light for pedestrians to activate when crossing Sunset and Woodhaven. So getting some additional information on that for our next meeting. And the last thing,
I'm sorry, what about Sunset and Woodhaven? You're adding something there?
There's a request for a blinking yellow LED light for pedestrians to activate when they want to cross.
Yes, my vote is for that.
Let me remind you, you're not on the subcommittee. Okay, thank you.
I'm still a citizen.
She can submit a formal request.
That's right. Let me refer you to the website where you can get that form. And then the last thing, our next scheduled meeting falls on Thanksgiving. So the subcommittee will not be meeting. Our next meeting will be on December 10th. So Chris, if you haven't received that word, put that on your calendar for December 10th.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris. Just as an aside, we were talking about roundabouts. The new roundabout out by the high school, the new high school, is rather interesting to weave your way through. And
I have a couple of concerns about that, Ralph, now that you bring it up, and I've been driving my kids over there 5 days a week for their sports. So it's interesting, you go around the roundabout in 2 lanes, but if you're getting off onto Kruger, you have to cross and cut off in front of a blind lane that can't see you. And so there's been already, with the high school not officially being open, but sports are open, there's been a lot of near misses because you come off of 99 across and you go around the roundabout and you're cutting over to Kruger and there's 2 lanes coming off of Edie and the farthest right lane can't see you and you have to cut in front of them and to go onto Kruger. So just a little note as an observer who's driving that now 5 days a week, it's a little stressful and more stressful that, again, I'm teaching my 16-year-old to drive and he's not super aware of things.
I think it's just an issue that will need to be addressed at some point.
Yeah.
But at least there's a left turn signal from Sunset onto 99.
That's amazing.
Finally. Mike, is there anything else?
That's all I got.
Mike, were you going to go over the traffic calming measures at all? Or would you like me to?
I would love you to, Chief.
Okay.
Chief,
so the other thing...
Before you go there, I have to say something about roundabouts. I have driven in England 3 times with manual transmissions and going around the wrong way with a manual transmission in busy towns like London. You learn how to defend yourself driving roundabouts. So, Diane, that's where you need to take your son. Just saying.
Or Venezuela or Paris. They're fun too.
I'm just not sure I want him to do it in my cars. I'm just saying. I don't want my insurance rates to go up.
No, maybe you could get a police cruiser to help you. Wink, wink.
Okay. Chief, you were about to say.
Okay, the other thing that the main item of business that the Traffic Safety Committee tackled was they needed to establish a list of acceptable traffic calming measures. So they have had, over the last couple months, quite a bit of conversation about this, a lot of education from the city engineer, Bob Glotty, from Dr. Moji Takalu, and other city staff, including Julia Hyduke. And so city staff has prepared a resolution to bring to council establishing acceptable traffic calming measures that the Traffic Safety Committee approved at their last meeting. You have a copy of that in your packet, and I just wanted the reason we have these updates is because the Police Advisory Board was instrumental in getting the Traffic Safety Committee going. So, and obviously you have 2 members of your board, of this board, on that committee. So it's important for you to see the work they're doing. So you have a copy of that resolution in front of you. You have a copy of the attachment. And basically, I'm going to very quickly go through what that list is. So the acceptable traffic calming measures include chicane, a choker, corner extension bulb out, diagonal diverter, lateral shift, median barrier forced turn lane, median island, mini roundabout, on-street parking, raised intersection, realigned intersection, roundabout, speed cushion, speed hump, speed table, raised crosswalk, and traffic circle. Now, of note, since it's been discussed at some length, you do not see speed bump on the list. So think of a speed bump as the very narrow, kind of high things when you drive over them that jars your whole vehicle. Instead, you have speed cushions and speed humps, which are significantly different. They're much wider and much easier on emergency vehicles and even personal vehicles. So there's quite a list there. If you want to know what each of them is specifically, you have that material in your handout, but just so you're aware of what is going to be presented to City Council at their December 1st meeting, you have that there. And then the last thing I will say is that you should know that if you don't already, if you haven't been watching the Traffic Safety Committee meetings, or you haven't had visited with Mike and or Chris, the Traffic Safety Committee is extremely busy. They are very quickly getting inundated with requests and complaints that they are addressing. And they're just, it's not unlike the Police Advisory Board at your first meeting when you were handed medical marijuana and then several months later recreational marijuana, and you were kind of drinking from a fire hose. That's what the Safety Committee is doing now with a lot of these requests. And they're discovering how they can become either very popular very quickly or very unpopular very quickly, depending on the yes or the no. And it's no surprise to me and other city staff, to Councilor Young, but I think to a lot of the Traffic Safety Committee members, I think if they didn't already realize, they're discovering how passionate people are about traffic-related matters. And we saw just a snippet of that tonight when the topic of roundabouts came up. So anyway, they are doing tremendous work. So that's all I wanted to go over.
Okay. I think we're down to item 7, Counselor News. Counselor Kim, I know we voiced it early on, but congratulations on your re-election, and we are so glad that you're part of this board, and that you're going to remain one of our counselors. What do you have for us tonight?
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I'm sorry, you have a hand up. I don't know if he needs to go before Councilor Young or after.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry.
Since I wasn't at the last traffic safety meeting, why in this list of calming measures are not the signage stuff?
Well, I can only assume that they're not considered a traffic calming measure. I don't know, Chris.
Okay, because that's when we've addressed, as Mike knows, a lot of things. Signage, besides enforcement and stuff, signage is something that we've addressed, like in Bob's neighborhood. And when I looked at the list in preparing for this, that's one of the things I saw that wasn't included. So I just wondered if it was discussed.
Yeah, I don't recall. I watched the meeting after the fact, and so I don't remember, Mike. I don't know if you remember.
I don't recall it being discussed. You're exactly right, Chris.
There you go, Councilor Young, for when it comes to you guys.
I guess the good news is it can always be added. If it's meant to be on there, it can always be added at some later date. Or maybe for some reason they don't consider signage as a calming measure. It'd be interesting to hear why. So that's a good point. So, all right. As far as Councilor Young, thank you, Ralph, for the acknowledgement of be serving for another 4 years. So I thank the Sherwood community for that. All 3 counselors that are currently sitting were reelected. So I think that, and I hope that means that the community feels we're, as a counselor, doing a good job. So I really enjoy the council that we have and are working together. So last Tuesday, no, 2 days ago, we had a council meeting. I've had a meeting every night this week, so now they're all running together. We had a long work session. We started at 5:30, and we talked about in our work session 3 things. Sherwood West, re-looking at Sherwood West, a Sherwood North UGB possible expansion, and our housing needs and analysis for our comprehensive plan update. As far as the Sherwood West goes, what we're looking at is we got a grant from Metro to sort of re-look at the concept plan over there. Many of you know probably that the concept plan was done back in prior to me being on council. So I want to say 2015, 14, 15, somewhere around there. And back then, the council, I think, was heavily, or the concept plan was heavily based on residential. And you've probably heard me talk a number of times over the last 2 years that this council's really focused on economic development for our city to help balance our tax base a little more. So we just want to look at Sherwood West and see where we could possibly, there's some prime areas over there that could be industrial or commercial and residential, obviously. But so we're just kind of re-looking at that to see how we can bring more jobs in that area. As far as the Sherwood North, the city had been approached by Deacon Construction, Deacon something, about doing the area just north of Home Depot and across the street, right next to the refuge, doing some more Home Depot, on the Home Depot side, some more commercial retail type space with an anchor store on that side, and then across the street, I think more office type, maybe hotel type over that area. So that would be what they call to Metro, it's a special type of UBG request, and I can't remember the term for it. So the Deacon currently is doing some outreach to the community. I think there's some information on the city's webpage. It's going to be being pushed out, a survey possibly, just so the community's involved or hears what the plans are and can provide some feedback. But that is what we're talking about there. And then this coming Tuesday, an unplanned meeting, City Council is going to be meeting with Metro to get a little bit more information on, they're looking at increasing the tipping fee, which then gets passed through to Pride, which then gets passed through to us. And even though by the time it gets passed through to us residentials or business, you know, sometimes it's 35 cents or 50 cents, but, you know, those all add up over the years. And they're talking about also doing another one in July. So we're just really kind of pinpointing them to get answers as to why it's necessary. They're also looking at building another transfer station out in Forest Grove area. So we're just kind of trying to get some questions answered as to, is that necessary, the cost of that. It's like a Taj Mahal with community rooms and viewing areas, and I mean, you know, so that's that. Coming up, I believe December 1st, might be December 16th, we'll be updating the municipal code. As many of you know, the measure to pass recreational marijuana passed in Sherwood, so we will be having recreational sales. So we'll be updating the municipal code to add that. And then also in December, we're going to be having a work session with TriMet to discuss TriMet's routes, possible changes that they might be looking at, and discussing our concerns and things we might want to see changed through our routes here in Sherwood. So that's kind of what's on our horizon.
Okay, thank you. Chief, how about staff?
Thank you. Not much to report tonight. I will share that we already talked about the pursuit, and then the only other item is, as I'm sure most of you are aware, the governor issued an executive order a few days ago that took effect yesterday. We will continue, as we have all summer since COVID started, to take an educational approach to enforcement, for lack of a better term. And so I think it's important that you all know that. There's some uniqueness to this latest executive order that frankly creates some potential challenges from an enforcement perspective. So regardless of that, our approach is going to be education first, and we will only take actual enforcement action. And this stance has not changed, by the way, so I'm just reiterating, in only the most egregious, flagrant violations of any executive orders, any of them. So certainly this last one as well. So that's that. That's all I have.
Okay.
Chief, did I see a reserve officer announcement?
You did.
Okay. And that's, explain to me again, what a reserve officer, how are they compensated? What's the...
Reserve police officers are volunteers, and they are fit into one of multiple categories. They may start as reserve in the hopes of becoming a full-time police officer at some point. They may be a reserve just because they want to give back to their community. And so those are really the kind of the two main categories, but they're purely volunteer. And they wear uniform. Once they've completed the necessary training, they'll wear uniform, carry a gun, but they will always be in the presence of another officer. So they will not be out driving around by themselves. In Sherwood.
Are reserve officers, this is new to me, are they, say, retired officers from the force, or someone with a police background, or just like,
could be.
I'm going to pick on you, Mike, because I know you want to do it, so you go through this training that you just talked about.
Yep, could be all the above.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Mike
so
Smith. Mike. You had your hand up, Mike.
Yes, I do. I just have a question for Commissioner Young regarding some of the development along 12th and Sherwood Road around 124th. And this is just, it intrigues me because all of the construction going on there, and there's that one house just still stuck there in the middle that nothing is going on with. Is there a story to that? Do you know which house I'm talking about? It's on the right-hand side.
No, I'm not off the top of my head, but I'm thinking it may be somebody who hasn't wanted to annex in yet. Do you know what house he's talking about, Chief?
I do. And I don't think it's been leveled yet.
Oh, okay.
It's going down, just hasn't happened yet.
Yes, that entire chunk of property there is being developed by Trammell Crow.
Oh, it's on the Trammell Crow property. Okay.
Yes, and my assumption, Mike, is they just haven't brought it down yet.
Cool. Thank you. Just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Chief,
So
you know if the old guy moved out?
You know, as you're proceeding eastbound on 12th and Sherwood, approaching 124th, that land on the right is in the city of Sherwood. Mm-hmm. Once you get to 124th and go past it, the land on the right is the city of Tualatin. So 124th is the city limit dividing road between Sherwood and Tualatin now, in that area there. And the house is vacant, as at least it appears vacant to me. And so like I said, imagine at some point it'll be raised.
You obviously can tell I drive that road with blinders on because I really just drive. You must look around.
Angie, do we have any citizen comments for this evening?
No, we did not receive any for this evening.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else that has anything to bring for the good of the group?
Yeah, Ralph, I'm sitting here thinking about the development out there and thinking that it might be beneficial if we invited Bruce Coleman, who's the economic development manager for the city, to give a brief presentation on what's happening out there. I've talked to Bruce, and it's quite interesting what the plans are and what he's working on, and I think everybody would probably appreciate hearing from him.
I second that. Bruce is amazing.
You're here.
Yes.
Chief, can you put him on the invite list?
Would you like him to come on December 17th?
Why not?
Sure.
Okay, we will work on it.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Chris. For the record, Bob, I got bounced off tonight. So It's not just you.
We did. We did.
Yes.
You know, I've been fined, and for the first time, you know, the little deal down in the right-hand corner that tells about the PAB meeting, and it says snooze or dismiss. I've been hitting the dismiss there, Chris, every time, and I've gone off every time. Tonight, I decided to leave it alone, and it's been perfect. So I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but next time, I plan to leave it there also.
It shouldn't have anything. That's just your reminder, but that is very coincidental.
You were dismissing yourself.
All right, Mike has his hand raised.
Dismissing, you want a motion to adjourn the meeting if there's nothing else, Chairman?
Yes, sir. Would you make that?
I make a motion that we dismiss this meeting.
And is there a second? Laurie seconds. All those in favor?
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.